Captain David Walsh stood at the massive viewing window of Aegis 1, Earth's largest orbital defense station. His hands were clasped behind his back as he watched another alien ship jump into hyperspace. That made 58 ships in the last hour alone. "Captain, you need to see this," called Susan Roberts, his senior sensor officer. Her voice shook slightly. The Concordette's entire defense fleet just activated their jump drives. David rushed to her station, leaning over her shoulder to study the readings. The massive ships of Earth's strongest allies, the ones who had promised to stand with humanity against any threat, were powering up their engines. One by one, their signals winked out as they fled into the safety of hyperspace. "Are they responding to any of our calls?" David asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "No, sir." Susan's fingers flew over her console. "Wait, we're getting a message from the Concordate Supreme Commander." The main screen flickered to life. Commander Zach Still, a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 eyes, appeared. His upper eyes showed what David had learned was their expression of regret. "People of Earth," Zach Still said, his translator making his words clear but unable to hide the fear in his voice. "We must withdraw. It comes. The void comes. We cannot. We will not face it. You should run if you can. Find shelter in the dark spaces between stars. We are sorry." The screen went black. "Sir," called out John Parker from the tactical station, "the long-range sensors are picking up something at the edge of the solar system. The energy readings, they're off the charts." David walked slowly back to the viewing window. He watched as the last of the Concordate ships disappeared. Humanity's allies of 50 years were gone in the span of a single day. His communicator buzzed. "Emergency meeting of all senior Earth Defense Force officers in 10 minutes, came the voice of General Mary Woods. "This is not optional, people." The meeting room was packed. Officers from every branch of Earth's military forces sat or stood wherever they could find space. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. General Woods stood at the front of the room, her face grim. "I'll cut to the chase. 3 hours ago, we detected an anomaly at the edge of our solar system. Our allies," she almost spat the word, "recognized it. That's why they ran." She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a mass of something. It looked like a tear in space itself, darker than black, spreading like an ink stain across the stars. "This is what we're calling the void," she continued. "According to the few bits of data the Concordate left us, it has destroyed or consumed 12 civilizations in the last 1,000 years. It's drawn to advanced technology and complex energy signatures. That's why they all ran. Their high-tech ships and weapons would only make it stronger." David raised his hand. "General, what are our orders?" She smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Our orders, Captain Walsh, are to do what humanity has always done. We stand our ground. We fight. The President will address the world in 1 hour. We expect panic, we expect fear, but we also expect what we've seen throughout human history: courage, determination, and the sheer stubborn refusal to give up." She straightened her uniform. "Earth's supposed allies might have fled, but we don't have that luxury. This is our home, our solar system, and we will defend it." David looked around the room. He saw fear in many faces, but he also saw determination. Humanity had fought its way up from caves, survived countless disasters, and reached for the stars. They weren't about to give up now. "The void will be here in approximately 72 hours, General Woods said. "I want every weapon ready, every ship crewed, and every soldier prepared. We're humanity. We don't run." As David left the meeting, he paused at a window overlooking Earth. The blue planet spun below, beautiful and vulnerable. Their allies had abandoned them, but maybe that was fitting. Humanity had always faced its greatest challenges alone. His communicator buzzed again. New orders. There was work to be done. The void was coming, but humanity would be ready. And maybe, just maybe, That would be enough. Dr. Linda Cooper brushed red dust off her knees as she stood up in the ancient Martian tunnel. Her flashlight beam danced across strange symbols that covered the walls. After 5 years of studying these ruins, today was different. Today, these symbols seemed urgent, almost like they were screaming. Dr. Cooper, her assistant, Paul Baker, ran down the tunnel, his boots echoing against the stone floor. "Have you seen the news? All our alien allies are gone." Linda nodded without looking away from the wall. "That's why I'm here, Paul. These symbols, I think they're trying to tell us why." She pressed her hand against a circle of strange markings. "This isn't just history, it's a warning." She turned to her computer tablet and began matching patterns. "Look at this. Every 10,000 years, these marks showed the same thing. A darkness coming and civilizations running away. But there's more." Paul leaned closer to the wall. "What do you mean?" "The Martians weren't the first to build here," Linda explained, her voice growing excited despite the grim situation. "This planet has been used as a warning station by at least 5 different alien races. Each one left messages for whoever came next." She walked down the tunnel, her flashlight revealing more symbols. They all saw it coming. The void. But here's the interesting part. None of them tried to fight it. They just ran. Her tablet beeped. New translations appeared on the screen. Linda's eyes widened. "Paul, get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command. Now." An hour later, Linda stood in front of a video screen, facing General Woods and the Earth Defense Council. The red dust was still on her suit, but nobody cared about that now. "The void isn't just a natural disaster," Linda explained, showing them the translated symbols. "It's drawn to advanced technology because it feeds on the specific type of energy these civilizations used. Quantum engines, dark matter drives, anti-gravity generators, all the things our allies used. But we don't use most of that technology," General Woods said. "We're still working with fusion drives and conventional physics." Linda nodded eagerly. "Exactly. The Martians discovered something important. They found that simpler technology, especially technology based on different scientific principles, was harder for the void to detect and consume." She showed them more images from the ruins. Each civilization that came here was more advanced than the last, and each one ran faster than the one before. "But look at this." She pointed to a series of symbols at the bottom of the wall. "The last message, written in what we thought was just decorative script, says something fascinating. It says, 'The simple ones may survive. The proud ones can only run.'" The council chamber fell silent. "Are you saying," a council member asked slowly, "that our technological backwardness might actually save us?" "I'm saying it gives us a chance," Linda replied. "Our allies' advanced technology would have made them perfect targets. But us, we're still using computers based on electricity. Our weapons still use chemical propellants and nuclear fusion. We're primitive by their standards." She brought up one final image. "There's more. These readings suggest the void itself has some kind of consciousness. It's not just a force of nature. It's an entity that thinks. And if it can think, it can be fought," General Woods finished. Linda smiled grimly. "Exactly. Every other civilization ran because they thought their advanced technology was their only strength. But humanity." She looked at each council member in turn. "We've always been good at thinking our way around problems, finding unexpected solutions, using what others consider primitive to achieve the impossible." The council chamber erupted in discussion. Linda watched as hope began to replace fear in their eyes. Yes, the void was coming. Yes, it had driven away every advanced civilization it had encountered. But humanity was different. As she walked back to her lab, Linda's tablet beeped again. More translations were coming through from the Martian ruins. She smiled as she read them. The ancient messages weren't just warnings. They were pieces of a puzzle, and humanity had always been good at solving puzzles. The void was in for a surprise. Sometimes, being primitive had its advantages. Colonel Robert Hayes stood in the Luna Defense Base's command center, watching the massive screen that showed the approaching void. It looked like someone had torn a hole in space itself. Behind him, Lieutenant Amy Martinez worked furiously at her station, coordinating Earth's defensive fleet. "First contact in 10 minutes," Amy announced, her voice steady despite the tension. The entire room fell silent. Earth's remaining ships had formed a defensive line between the moon and the approaching darkness. "All weapons charge," Robert said into his comm. "Remember your training. We hit it with everything we've got." The void moved closer. It didn't travel like normal ships. Instead, it seemed to leak across space, like spilled ink spreading across paper. The stars disappeared wherever it passed. 5 minutes, Amy called out. Robert watched the tactical display. 1,000 Earth ships waited in formation. They weren't as advanced as their former allies' vessels, but they were sturdy, built to last, like humanity itself. "Sir," Amy said suddenly, "I'm picking up something strange. The void, it's sending out probes." Dark tentacles of energy reached out from the main mass. They moved faster than anything Robert had ever seen. 3 of them headed straight for the defense line. "All ships, open fire," Robert ordered. The space around Luna lit up. Fusion missiles, plasma beams, and good old-fashioned nuclear warheads streaked toward the approaching tendrils. The weapons hit their targets and did almost nothing. "Minimal effect," Amy reported, her fingers flying over her controls. "The energy weapons are being absorbed. The physical warheads are just passing through." Robert gritted his teeth, switched to backup plans, launched the kinetic strike platforms. Massive tungsten rods, accelerated to near-light speed, shot from Luna's surface installations. These were simple weapons, just heavy metal moving very fast. No fancy energy signatures or complex technology. The rods hit the tendrils. This time, something happened. "Sir," Amy's voice rose with excitement. "The kinetic weapons are having an effect. The void entities are actually avoiding them." Robert leaned forward. "Show me." The tactical display zoomed in. The dark tendrils were indeed moving away from the paths of the kinetic weapons. They weren't being destroyed, but they were being forced to change course. "All ships," Robert commanded, "switch to physical ammunition only. Railguns, mass drivers, anything that throws solid objects. Ignore the energy weapons." The battle shifted. Earth's ships began firing clouds of metal slugs and rocks. Simple weapons, barely more advanced than throwing stones. But they worked. The void couldn't absorb or ignore them. "Lieutenant Martinez," Robert called out, "I want you to analyze why these weapons are working. There has to be a reason." Amy nodded and bent over her station. For the next hour, while the battle raged, she studied the sensor readings. The void's tendrils probed again and again, but each time they were forced back by walls of high-speed metal and rock. "Colonel," Amy suddenly straightened up, "I think I found something. Look at these readings." Robert moved to her station. The screen showed complex sensor data, but Amy's explanation was simple. "The void entities are used to dealing with energy weapons and high technology," she said. "But physical objects, especially simple ones moving at high speed, have a different effect. It's like they don't know how to process them." She brought up more data. "And there's something else. Every time we hit them with physical weapons, there's a strange energy spike, almost like they're thinking about how to respond. These aren't just mindless energy tentacles. They're confused." Robert stared at the screen. "They're confused by simple weapons, things that don't need complex technology to work." "Exactly." Amy's eyes shone. "And look at this pattern. Every time we hit them, the response time gets longer. They're having to think harder about how to deal with our primitive attacks." Robert smiled for the first time since the battle began. He opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. "This is Colonel Hayes. We've found a weakness. The void entities can be hurt, and more importantly, they can be confused. We need every ship equipped with physical ammunition. And I mean everything. Rocks, metal, anything that can be thrown at high speed. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. As he sent the message, another wave of void tendrils approached. But this time, Robert wasn't worried. The human fleet waited, armed with the simplest weapons ever made. Objects thrown really fast at their enemy. Sometimes being primitive had its advantages, and humanity was about to prove it. Mark Sullivan hadn't seen sunlight in 3 days. Deep in the underground research facility in Colorado, he and his team worked nonstop to understand their enemy. The room was filled with computers and strange equipment, but the most important device sat in the center. A modified brain scanner. Run the test again, Mark told his assistant, Karen White. He rubbed his tired eyes as he watched the screen. Something was there, right at the edge of his understanding. The scanner hummed to life. On the table next to it lay a small piece of the void, a tiny dark spot that had been captured during the Luna battle. It floated in a special container, still as dangerous as ever. Look at this, Karen said, pointing to the readings. Every time we scan it with regular sensors, nothing. But when we record human brainwaves near it, the dark spot moved. Just a little, but it moved. Mark sat up straighter. Play back the last 3 tests. The screen showed the results. Regular scanners, X-rays, radiation detectors. Nothing affected the void sample, but human brainwaves made it react every time. It's not just reacting, Mark said slowly. It's trying to get away from the brain patterns, almost like they heard it. His phone rang. It was Dr. Linda Cooper from Mars. Mark, she said without greeting, I found something in the Martian ruins. The last message talks about minds that the darkness fears, I think. The void is afraid of human consciousness, Mark finished. We just proved it here. There was an excited pause on the other end. How fast can you get to the general's office? 2 hours later, Mark stood in front of General Woods and her staff. He had brought the void sample and his equipment. Watch this, he said. He turned on the brain scanner, which now played recorded human brainwaves. The dark spot in the container writhed as if in pain. The void isn't just afraid of simple technology, Mark explained. It's afraid of human minds. Our brainwaves are completely different from the alien species it usually encounters. He showed them more test results. Advanced alien races developed their brains to be more organized, more logical, but human brains are messy. We think in patterns that make no sense to the void. And these patterns hurt it. Are you saying we can fight the void with our minds? General Woods asked. Not exactly, Mark said, but we can use our brainwaves as a weapon. He pulled out designs for a new device. This is a neural transmitter. It takes human brain patterns and broadcasts them. Think of it as a mental loudspeaker. The general studied the designs. How fast can you build these? That's the best part, Mark grinned. They're simple. No complex technology. Just basic electronics and human thoughts. We can make thousands in days. And they work? She asked. Mark pointed to the void sample, which was still trying to get away from the brain scanner. They work better than any weapon we have. The general smiled. Get to work, Mr. Sullivan. I want every ship and station equipped with these transmitters. 1 week later, Mark watched from the control room as the first full test began. 100 ships, each carrying his neural transmitters, approached a small piece of the void that had broken off from the main mass. Transmitters active, reported the fleet commander. The effect was immediate. The dark mass tried to retreat, but the ships surrounded it. Human brainwaves, broadcast at full power, bombarded the void fragment from all sides. Then something amazing happened. The void piece didn't just retreat, it began to break apart. Sir, called one of the sensor operators. We're detecting fear. The void entity is actually afraid. Mark watched in amazement. The most advanced alien races in the galaxy had run from the void. But humanity, with its primitive minds and simple technology, had found its weakness. As the test concluded, Mark began drawing up plans for even more powerful transmitters. The void had never encountered anything like human consciousness before. Now it would learn why Earth's allies had made a mistake in running away. Sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't the most advanced. Sometimes it was simply being human. Commander Rachel Wilson stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Defiance, watching her fleet prepare for humanity's first major attack against the void. Every ship now carried Mark Sullivan's neural transmitters, and the crews had trained for weeks to use them. "All ships report ready," Major Brian Foster announced from his tactical station. "Neural transmitters at full power." Rachel took a deep breath. This was it. After weeks of defending, they were finally taking the fight to the enemy. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Operation Pushback begins now." The fleet moved forward as one. 500 ships, arranged in a spear formation, headed straight for the edge of the void. On every ship, crews focused their thoughts into the transmitters, creating waves of human consciousness that pushed ahead of the fleet like an invisible shield. "First contact in 3 minutes," Brian reported. His hands moved steadily over his controls, coordinating the attack groups. "The void is reacting to our approach." Rachel watched as dark tendrils reached out from the main mass. But this time, they moved differently. Instead of attacking, they seemed to hesitate. "They remember us," Rachel smiled. "They remember what happened at Luna Base. All ships, full power to neural transmitters." The space between the fleet and the void lit up with energy as hundreds of neural transmitters broadcast human thought patterns at maximum strength. The void's tendrils pulled back. "It's working," Brian called out. "The void is retreating from our broadcast zone." But then something changed. The void wasn't just retreating, it was gathering itself together, forming into a more solid mass. "Ma'am," Brian's voice was tense. "I'm detecting some kind of response. The void, it's trying to think as one." Rachel leaned forward. "Interesting. It's learning to work together against us." She opened a channel to all ships. "Change of plans. Target your neural transmitters on a single point. Let's see how it handles concentrated human thought." The fleet adjusted their aim. 500 neural transmitters, all focused on one spot in the void's mass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the void screamed. It wasn't a sound anyone could hear, but every sensor on every ship detected it. The dark mass where they had concentrated their attack began to tear apart. "We've found its weakness," Rachel announced to the fleet. "It can't handle concentrated human consciousness. All ships, form attack groups. Target different sections. Break it apart." The Earth fleet split into smaller groups, each targeting a different part of the void. Everywhere they focused their neural transmitters. The darkness began to break down. "New reading," Brian suddenly shouted. "The void, it's changing its strategy." Multiple signals detected, heading toward Earth. Rachel's eyes widened as she saw the tactical display. The void was sending tendrils past their fleet, ignoring the military targets. "They're going for civilian populations," she realized. "They're learning, adapting. If they can't beat our trained crews, they'll try to attack unprotected civilians." She quickly opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. "General Woods, the void is changing tactics. They're targeting civilian areas. We need to protect our people." The general's response was immediate. "Already on it, Commander. Mark Sullivan just finished installing neural transmitters in every major city. Our civilians might not be soldiers, but they can still fight back." Rachel watched as the void tendrils approached Earth, only to be met by waves of human consciousness from the planet's surface. Millions of human minds, now armed with neural transmitters, created a shield that the void couldn't penetrate. "Look at that," Brian said softly. "Every city, every town, everyone's fighting back." Rachel smiled proudly. The Void had expected to find helpless civilians. Instead, it found 7 billion humans, all ready to defend their home. "Send word to all ships," she ordered. "Press the attack. The Void just showed us it can feel fear. Now let's show it why." The Earth fleet moved forward again, their neural transmitters powered by crews who knew their homes and families were safe. The Void had made a crucial mistake. It had assumed that only trained soldiers could fight. But on Earth, everyone was part of the defense now. And humanity was just getting started. Captain David Walsh stared at Earth through Aegis I's window, just as he had when this all began. But now, instead of watching allies flee, he watched the Void launch its biggest attack yet. Multiple contacts. Susan Roberts called from her sensor station. The Void is everywhere. It's surrounding the whole planet. Dr. Linda Cooper stood beside David, having come from Mars to help coordinate Earth's defense. "They're desperate," she said. "We've hurt them more than any species ever has. Now they're trying to end this with one massive attack." The Void had changed its shape. Instead of tendrils and separate pieces, it now formed a giant sphere around Earth, blocking out the stars. It looked like a dark bubble trying to swallow the planet. "All stations, report," David commanded. "Neural defense grid is online," John Parker replied. "Every city, every town is broadcasting. But the Void, it's so much bigger than before." Linda rushed to a computer terminal. The Martian ruins warned about this. It's called the Sphere of Silence. The Void tries to cut off a planet completely, blocking all thought and energy until nothing survives. David watched as the dark sphere grew closer. But Earth wasn't defenseless. Neural transmitters on every continent powered up, creating a glowing web of human consciousness that surrounded the planet like a shield. "Global Defense Network is at full power," Susan reported. 7 billion minds, all fighting back at once. The two forces met in space. Darkness crashed against human thought like waves against a shore. The Void pressed down, trying to crush Earth's defenses. "We're losing power in the European sector," John shouted. "Asian grid is weakening. They can't hold much longer." David grabbed the global communication controls. "This is Captain Walsh to all Earth citizens. The Void is trying to overwhelm us with its size. But remember, we're human. We don't give up. Think about your homes, your families, everything you're fighting for. Push back." Linda suddenly grabbed his arm. "David, look at the readings. When people focus on their emotions, their strongest memories, the neural transmitters get stronger." David nodded and turned back to the comm. "Everyone, listen. Don't just resist. Remember everything that makes you human. Love, hope, anger, joy. Feel it all. Push those feelings through the transmitters." Across the planet, people understood. Parents thought of their children. Friends remembered times together. Artists recalled moments of creation. Scientists remembered their discoveries. Every human memory, every emotion, poured into the neural network. The shield around Earth began to glow brighter. Power levels rising. Susan called out, "The neural grid is getting stronger." The Void's dark sphere shuddered. Where before it had pressed down with overwhelming force, now it began to crack. Spots of starlight showed through its surface. "It's working," Linda shouted. "Human emotions, they're like poison to the Void. It can't process them." David watched in amazement as Earth's neural shield expanded outward, pushing against the darkness. The Void sphere began to break apart, unable to handle the flood of human consciousness. "All military ships," David commanded, "concentrate fire on the breaking points. Physical weapons only." Earth's fleet, which had been waiting behind the shield, moved into action. They fired clouds of simple metal slugs and rocks at the weakened spots in the Void sphere. The combination of human thought and primitive weapons was too much. The sphere shattered. Pieces of the Void flew apart, fleeing from Earth like smoke in the wind. 7 billion humans had stood their ground, and they had won. "They're running. Susan reported, her voice filled with joy. The void is actually running away. David looked at Linda, who was studying the sensor readings. Will they come back? She shook her head, smiling. No, we didn't just beat them. We taught them fear. The void learned that some things in the universe are more powerful than advanced technology. Things like human emotion, human memory, and human determination. As cheers filled the command center, David turned back to the window. Earth glowed below them, its neural shield slowly powering down. The planet had faced its greatest test, and humanity had proven why it was different from all those advanced races who ran away. Sometimes, being human was all the advantage you needed. 3 months after the void's retreat, Earth's orbital space became crowded again. But this time was different. The returning alien ships approached slowly, almost shamefully. Captain David Walsh, Dr. Linda Cooper, Engineer Mark Sullivan, Commander Rachel Wilson, and the other heroes of the Void War stood in Aegis I's main conference room. They watched as Supreme Commander Zach Still of the Concordat walked in, his 4 eyes downcast. "People of Earth," Zach Still said, his translator not hiding the respect in his voice. I have come to apologize. We ran when we should have stood with you. We abandoned our allies out of fear." General Mary Woods stepped forward. "You came back rather quickly once the danger passed." "We came back," Zach Still corrected, "because the galaxy needs to learn from humanity's example." He activated a hologram showing the Void's retreat. "You did what no other civilization has done. You stood your ground. You fought. You won." Mark Sullivan spoke up from his position near the neural transmitter displays. "We won because we used what we had. Simple weapons, human minds, basic technology." "Exactly." Zach Still's upper eyes showed excitement. "For millennia, we thought advanced technology was the answer to everything. We forgot that sometimes simpler is better. We forgot that consciousness itself could be a weapon." Linda opened her computer tablet, showing the Martian ruins data. "Every civilization before us ran because they thought their advanced technology was their only strength. They never tried fighting with basic weapons or using their minds as defense." And now, Rachel Wilson added, "The Void knows there's something in the galaxy it can't beat, something it can't understand or absorb. Human consciousness," David finished. "Human emotion. Human determination." Zach Still nodded. "Which is why we're here. The Concordat, all the alien races, we request Earth's help. We need to learn from you, to remember what it means to stand and fight, to use simple solutions for complex problems." General Wood smiled slightly. "You want humanity, the primitive species, to teach the advanced races how to defend themselves." "Yes," Zach Still said simply. "Your primitive ways proved stronger than our advanced technology. Will you help us?" The Earth leaders looked at each other. 3 months ago, these same aliens had abandoned them. But being human meant more than holding grudges. "We will help," General Wood said, "on one condition. Earth becomes a full member of the Concordat's Defense Council. Equal partners, not junior allies." "Agreed," Zach Still said quickly. In fact, the Council voted to make Earth the head of all defense matters. "You've earned it." As the meeting continued, David walked to the window. Earth spun below, its neural defense grid now a permanent part of the planet's protection. In just a few months, humanity had gone from being the primitive species that everyone pitied to being the teachers that everyone wanted to learn from. On a screen nearby, he watched news reports from around the world. Alien ships landing in every country, their crews eager to learn Earth's primitive but effective defense methods. Mark Sullivan teaching other races how to build neural transmitters. Linda Cooper leading expeditions to find more ancient warnings and knowledge. "Quite a change, isn't it?" Rachel said, joining him at the window. 3 months ago they ran away. Now they're lining up to learn from us." David nodded. "Because we did what humans have always done. We stood our ground. We fought smart, not just with advanced technology. We used everything we had: our minds, our emotions, our simple but effective weapons. And we stayed united, Rachel added. 7 billion humans, all fighting together. Around them, the meeting was wrapping up. Plans were being made for Earth to train other races in neural defense. Simple weapons were being added to advanced alien ships. Humanity's primitive solutions were becoming the galaxy's new standard. You know what the best part is? David said, watching an alien ship dock at the station. We didn't have to become like them to win. We won by being exactly who we are: human. As Earth's sun rose over the planet's edge, its light showed a changed solar system. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged stronger. They hadn't just survived. They had shown the galaxy a new way to fight, a new way to think, a new way to win. Sometimes, being human wasn't just an advantage. Sometimes, it was everything you needed to be.